Okay, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm very excited to welcome to you the first panel of INOCon, Tools to Emotionally Engage Your Audience, featuring our incredible guests, Tiffany Yu, Michelle Golden, and Heather Swaine. So Tiffany is the head of music at WeTransfer, where she's in charge of building out their music strategy and overseeing projects from emerging young talent to renowned artists. Previously, she served as the VP of Digital Marketing and Entertainment at 360 Group and as Digital Marketing Manager at Red Light Management, among other experiences. And Michelle is currently the Director of Communications at Known, a creative marketing agency which specializes in developing and implementing creative campaigns across industries. She previously served as Senior Manager for Brand Marketing at The Orchard and has experience producing events for Superfly and the Clive Davis Institute. And Heather is the Senior Director of Communications at WMA. She has over 12 years of music industry experience specializing in PR at both indie and major labels, including Virgin Records, EMI Records, Warner Bros. Records, and many more. So welcome everyone, and we'll jump right in. So first, I think you could each tell us a little bit what it means to emotionally engage an audience, and how have you accomplished this in either your current position or in the past?
I guess I can kick it off. Well, I'm Michelle. Thank you for the introduction. And really happy to be here. I think how to emotionally engage your audience, and I'm speaking more from the corporate side rather than working directly with the artist, but more on the music and creative corporate marketing side of a company, is really meeting them where they are and having honest, and we always use the word authentic, but really, really honest and vulnerable conversations and not being afraid to do so. I think the past year also has reminded us of the importance of communication. And so really, really having strong communication ties. And that, from my perspective, is really how you can authentically engage with audience. But I'm sure the others can speak more to specifically like the artist and fan relationship.
Yeah, I mean,
Thanks for the, sorry.
Oh, go for it, Heather.
I was just going to say from the artist side, obviously, yeah, that's the vast majority of what I do is working with artists from very, very development level, and there may just be us and a manager on board, or even just us and the artist, all the way up to huge major label campaigns. And I think Michelle completely hit the nail on the head, is that it is all down to authenticity. From a really basic PR point of view, it's the artist really thinking at the beginning of when they start writing their music or they start wanting to release, is really what they stand for and what they want to say as an artist. Sometimes we have artists come to us and they haven't even thought about doing that. And so, yeah, them really thinking about who they want to be, what they stand for, and then really working with a publicist to help sort of develop that story. But it always has to be authentic.
Yeah, I mean, perfect cap on that. I think we work with artists quite often, and a lot of it is to talk and dig deeper on what they stand for and their theme or their story of what they're making. And I think that's really rare for any brand or even media site. So to emotionally engage, you have to recognize that an artist has that ability to really play with anyone's emotions and also have the scarcity of the talent. And so recognizing that, and then kind of getting into the story, getting into what they're about, and also look at how they're driving their creative ship. That's what you do to like emotionally engage an audience. You get them into your story. You are relatable, etc. And that's kind of what I do, is I try to meet them into like a vision of something they stand for or a story they want to tell that another media site doesn't have the capability to tell that story.
Right. So I've definitely noticed that artists nowadays, with everything being virtual and on digital platforms, they have been finding a lot of innovative ways to authentically reach their audience through digital platforms. So what do you guys think are some of the best platforms for fan or audience engagement for both brands and artists?
TikTok.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm happy to kick that one off though, just because I'm working with a Decca Records signed artist, and they did a Tiny Desk, NPR Tiny Desk, and just to say that we got some, we saw the stats, and from the minute that Tiny Desk went live, the streaming increased huge amounts. So I think those platforms, and again, it goes down to that what we're here to talk about today, emotionally engaging, is really the platforms like Tiny Desk. Mahogany in the UK is a really big one that a lot of people talk about, that gets shared a lot. And the other one, of course, is Colours in Berlin. They're the ones that artists really want to be on, and they're the ones that we really, really see a huge amount of streaming stats coming from those.
And I think that's all about community as well. Like those are, there's a huge community following behind each of those platforms.
Absolutely.
Obviously love Tiny Desk. That's a really great example, and Colours as well. Like everyone wants to be on those two. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, and TikTok, obviously, like TikTok has a huge community following. I mean, who hasn't tried to make like the feta pasta tomato dish that went viral, as an example. But TikTok has a huge platform and huge following, and there's definitely so many creative ways that artists and companies as well can really engage audiences on that platform.
One thing that I haven't used, but I've admired for years from working with various artists at 360 is Twitch. Last year, they just added the music tab, and I thought that was pretty needed. And what's great about Twitch is that they kind of have this open format for other tools. You can connect into your Twitch channel to engage an audience. If you're streaming, there's polls you can take, there's certain like requests you can do. And, there's also charity donation elements to it. And I think it's really interesting that they've kind of given, aside from this play bar, but they've given the user the ability to put, advertising or polls or just really there's been so many unique tools that I've seen within the Twitter or the Twitch chat function and in the panels below, where it's been fun to engage and just kind of get involved in discussion.
Right. I think, platforms like Twitch and TikTok are great because the artist or the brand can really communicate directly with the fans. But then with something like Colours Show or Tiny Desk, you get that intimate community feel, even though it's still on the screen or online.
Yeah, and you nailed it. Like, I think the greatest part about Mahogany, Colours, and Tiny Desk is that sense of discovering an artist. And that is emotion right there. That's great to be the first one.
Yeah. So Tiffany, I'd love for you to tell us more about how artists and marketers can use WeTransfer or WePresent to engage fans. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about the SmeTransfer and Grimes projects.
Yeah. With WeTransfer, our users are about, I think, 70% creative or within the creative industry. And, we aim as a brand, we aim to protect the space for creatives. And that means keeping our product really simple. If you're not aware of our product, our main product is, I would say most people say file sharing. We also have a couple other products, Paste for creating presentations and decks. And then we have Collect, where it's like a Pinterest, but personal. I feel like Pinterest is more so shared. And then we also have Paper, which is a sketching tool on the iPad. And what's great about all of them is that they're very simple. So, with WeTransfer, we haven't really made huge innovations or any big changes to it. I think we've just made it better. So it's things, offering more space or offering a bigger file size to send back and forth. And we don't look at anything. And what's great about the brand is that we're now a B Corp. And I feel like being an artist, it's already, that feeling is very, I feel like from the past year, I feel like either artists feel very subconscious about being selfish about being an artist. And I don't think that's something that needs to needs to be like that. And I think that's why we as a brand stand for something. We're a B Corp, we get checked, we go through the B Corp checks of each year. I think we have a climate thing to hit, we have education goals, we have all the various things and I feel like if an artist wants to continue being an artist, to continue to collaborate, they can use our products knowing that we're light on data, we care about the environment, we're increasing education and accessibility. And then with We Present, a lot of that is telling the story that, a label won't want to pay for, or a label won't want to get involved in. And I think also the beauty of being independent or like privately owned is that we can stand with artists and stand by artists. I think that's something that no other brand can really say. So when, it was last summer with Black Lives Matter, we really mean it. We are standing by the artist. And I don't think, a publicly traded company could always make those statements. We did the same thing with gun violence in the US. We did a full takeover. And we did a few stories with artists that have had projects kind of like in the waiting room of, hey, we've wanted to do this, but we've never found a time to actually launch a piece of art that, or like a creative way of saying, hey, we're against gun violence. And we're like, we'll do that with you. We'll stand by you for that. With SME Transfer and Grimes and Prince, all of those have been on their own. They've done things. SME Transfer was literally on their own. They reached out and they were like, hey, can we actually do this portion of the project? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. So that he was already functioning. Smino was already functioning on his own and wanting to release music on his own and not have to fulfill anything with the label. And with Grimes, she was already using WeTransfer early days and giving away her stems. Most artists do that. And even with Prince, I believe it was like 2016 or 2017, but he gave away an album because he was just like, I don't want to deal with the structure of a label. I don't want the criticism of an A&R person saying that I need to have a featured artist or I need to change something for the mainstream. And so I think that WeTransfer gives artists the freedom. It's like, it's this empowerment of, you own your music, you can do whatever you want with it, or you own your own art and you can do whatever you want with it.
Right. It seems like a really cool platform for artists and brands to authentically express themselves, like you said, without those restrictions that usually will come along with bigger corporations or bigger labels. So I love to see WeTransfer coming up as a really cool way for musicians to share their music and for fans to get engaged also with the music making process.
And the brands can also creatively expand on WeTransfer.com. We are practically giving them the entire website for an ad. So they have to be beautiful.
Yeah, so that actually leads me to my next question, which is for Michelle. So you've had a lot of experience building partnerships throughout your career so far. So what would you say makes a successful partnership?
Yeah, I mean, a successful partnership to me and to the companies that I've worked for is really that both partners feel like they have an equal say, that they both kind of get what they want out of the partnership. So for example, I previously worked at the Clive Davis Institute of Recorded Music, and a lot of artists and a lot of brands wanted to reach the college student. The Clive Davis Institute sits under NYU Tisch. It's a 4-year program. And so the partnership really looked different than, maybe at a brand, but artists or at a company, but artists and brands were really able to sit in the classroom with students and engage with them differently. We partnered with Sony Music U and Wyclef, and we had like a battle of the bands, and Wyclef ended up choosing, one artist to be on his future mixtape. And it was like this really cool back to school college marketing effort. Something different, not just like the conversation with the artist and the student, but something that was really interactive and Wyclef could actually engage with the students. So that's just one example, but we keep talking about authenticity and building community and all that. And I think that resonates too with the partnerships and the events that I've produced and we've all produced in our career. And yeah, it's also just like a way to give back too. a lot of the partnerships that I've built were about like that social impact moment as well. So ways to, so for me, it's like ways to give back and do both parties feel like they are in an authentic way.
Right. So it seems like a successful partnership connects along some core values or some core goal that they share in common, and then they can build out from there.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Thank you. And Heather, I wanted to hear from you a little bit more about the PR side of things. So, you know, once you have this really great brand partnership or you have this really great artist identity, what are the crucial elements of a successful PR strategy? If you could talk about that for both grassroots artists and more established artists, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think starting from the grassroots artists, there's actually I wrote a piece from our global publicity team, which we've posted on LinkedIn. So if there's anybody out there that's kind of more development artists themselves or they're working PR for, then please go and have a look at that. But it's basically a PR 101 for new and development artists. But there's a couple of things really. I think, you know, to begin with, for development artists, it's, you know, what we said before is really them thinking first about what they want to say, when they want to say it, how they want to say it, and really kind of coming to their publicist with those ideas already. It sounds really, really silly as well, but sometimes the artists that come to us, they have no idea about the media that they kind of want to be featured in. So they kind of say the buzz sites. They say like, oh, we want to be featured on the Fader, or we want to be featured on Pitchfork, but they don't read those sites. They have no idea that the music that they do, you know, is not what Fader or Pitchfork are. So really, I think for artists, really take the time to kind of read about those, you know, educate yourself and read all of those sites that you want to be featured in, follow the journalists on Twitter, that type of thing, and really come to your publicist when you're ready, you have your assets ready. So sometimes, you know, artists come to us far too early. You know, they have absolutely nothing ready, or they come to us far too late. And would you believe it, we have artists coming to us on a Monday and saying, I've got a track out on Friday. I mean, sometimes it's that to the wire. So I think sort of timing is everything, making sure you've got everything in place, making sure that you've got your press shots ready, making sure that you've got your video ready, all those sort of basic things. And then I think, you know, really basic things like, you know, be nice, you know, when you go to a shoot and you know, say hi to everybody, say bye, you know, all of those sort of things. Really simple, I know, but it's massively important. And all the way to the other end of, you know, working with, at the moment I'm working with Hall & Oates and CMG on they are re-releasing for Record Store Day, You Make My Dreams Come True. It's just streamed 1 billion streams, which is amazing, and it was never actually released in the UK as a single. And I'm working really differently with them, more of a heritage artist. And what I really love doing with artists like that is taking them into a space that they're not used to being in. So I actually hooked Daryl Hall up with Mark Ronson, and Mark and Daryl interviewed each other for Clash magazine. So again, it's kind of a different publication for them to be featured in. But for sort of, more heritage artists, I love taking them into a space that they wouldn't normally be in and really opening them up to a whole new audience. And I find that artists, you know, more heritage artists love being, you know, obviously being introduced to a brand new audience. So I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, definitely. And we actually have a follow-up question from the audience. So this question is from Sean, and he asks, would you recommend a grassroots level artist to hire a publicist or a social media marketer, or do this by oneself? And also, at what point in an artist's career do you recommend that they go out and hire a PR agent?
That is a very good question. So I think, yes, I absolutely would recommend for a grassroots level artist to hire a publicist. But like I said, when the time is right, you know, you need to have, and I've talked about this, but you know, you need to have a bit of a release plan, a bit of a release strategy. It can be really basic to begin with, but when you go to journalists, they want to know that there's a plan. They don't just want to know that there's one single and that's it. In terms of the social, the social, and I actually now sort of oversee the UK social team at WMA. I genuinely believe that artists can do it themselves at the beginning. I really do. And WMA, again, and there's lots of other people that do this, but you can go to an agency and actually for not very much money, you can kind of, we call it a social education session. So really we look at all of the artists, we look at their Facebook, Twitter, etc., etc., etc. And we do a bit of a deep dive into what's working well, what's not working well. We give them some creative ideas, and then we present that back to them. We spend a couple of hours with artist, manager, label, whoever wants to be in the room. And we really, it's kind of like a 2-hour strategy session. And then the artist goes away and sort of rolls that out themselves. So, I mean, I don't think a grassroots level artist needs, to have a digital channel manager there. Obviously, when it gets to the point where they are touring and they are releasing loads of music, and then that's the point to kind of for a digital channel manager to come in. But there's definitely opportunities with agencies, and this is why just to reach out. There's ways of working that doesn't cost $100,000 or £100,000, but easy things that people can do to get some advice.
Yeah, I've actually had this like golden rule, because in the US it's big, and for a grassroots artist, you can't have the expectancy of like hiring a PR person and a digital person is going to make the facade of your like artistry and your like celebrity. Like I feel like with social, especially with last year, it's like it means a lot to actually be there answering. It means a lot that you're actually posting. And then for publicity, I feel like in music, we've had this piece where it's like the moment you've tried your best with what's exactly around you, and then need to go further. So if you're touring, so like even if it's LA, but you're going to Bakersfield, it's like that's when you start to go, I need a PR person. But I've always been a big advocate of social media should be done by the artists as best as they can and as personal as they can.
Yeah, I think just to add to that really quickly, thinking about the students at the Clive Davis Institute and a lot of Berkeley students, like you're all artists and working on your craft. And just as much as you're busy working on your craft, you should also put aside that time to really engage with your fans, as all the panelists have said already, on social media. What is your story? What do your lyrics mean? Give us a behind the scenes look, like really connect authentically with the fans. And I think that I'm just thinking of an artist that I know who's very grassroots level, and her name is Duendita, and she really just, she's based here in New York, and really just connects with her fans on social media and is all about releasing her music on SoundCloud, and just really like gets to the deep level and like what her fans want to hear. And she just, talks to them, connects with them on Instagram, social media, anything. And over time, that is how you will get noticed by someone, whether that's a publicist, an agent, or whoever, a manager down the line.
Absolutely. And I've got an example as well. I worked a few years ago with an artist called Femme. She is actually a producer now, going under a different name, but is really smashing it at UK radio at the moment. But when she was Femme, she was so sure about who she was as an artist, what she wanted to say, her creative. She had a really specific look. She did not have a big label behind her at all. Her styling, her videos and everything, just done herself, but she had such a strong artistic vision that it was so easy for me as a publicist to communicate her message, because she was so strong. She was so sure of who she was herself. And I think people always come to me and, we know how expensive videos can be, and major labels can spend, £50,000 on a video. I mean, she made a video, just a very clever idea. It looked great. The song was great. Styling was great, and I actually ended up premiering it on Vogue, because everything worked. It was just an amazing piece of artistry. And so it doesn't, things don't have to cost hundreds and thousands of pounds. If you think really clearly who you are as an artist, and you're creative, then it can be. And that's a dream for a publicist when someone like that comes to you, because like I said, it's so easy for me to tell that story.
Yeah, I worked with Frank Ocean at 360, and what I found that was really interesting later on after that project launch in 2016 was that there was a couple artists that worked with creative directors on that project, and their project did not turn out that well. And it was because they didn't have their own vision. They weren't driving their own creative. They thought that that creative director, after working with Frank Ocean, would be driving the creative and do it for them. But it doesn't work that way. You have to have your own vision as an artist. You have to have your own story. You have to have a long-tailed campaign, because you at the end of the day have to have skin in the game.
I think another good example too is, I don't know if you guys know, but Blue to Tiger. She just this past year, especially, also a Clive Davis Institute graduate, but not to keep going to Clive when we're on a Berkeley panel. But Blue to Tiger really launched so many TikTok videos of her playing the bass, covering all her favorite artists. And those generated views and engagement and buzz and talk. And now, I mean, she's really built her own brand. And yeah, one would consider her like a grassroots artist. She does now have more support, but everyone has to start somewhere, you know, and just taking that time. We're all home stuck during COVID. And she really was like, let me build my profile and my, and engage with new fans on this platform. And that happens to be TikTok, but it doesn't have to be TikTok. It can be any platform that you really connect with.
I completely agree, Michelle. We have another example of, I started working with an artist called Kat Burns, the day that she left Brit School, beginning of the pandemic, she hardly had any TikTok followers. And she basically was sat at home. She was bored like everybody else. And she basically just started singing. I mean, that was literally on TikTok, doing covers, and she ended up basically being the face of TikTok in the UK. She was used on the TV advert. She was basically all over the billboards. And I think it just exactly the same as you say, she really used that time to her amazing voice and basically get herself out there, just really, really, really engaging with her fans. And it massively paid off for her.
Yeah, this is why I love platforms like TikTok and even Instagram Live, because I think it really gives artists the opportunity to show their fans a glimpse into their day-to-day life and a glimpse into their creative process. But one thing is, a lot of artists I know, especially here at Berkeley, are juggling a lot of different things. So they have schoolwork, maybe another job, on top of trying to build out this big social media presence and record an EP or whatever it may be. So do you have advice for grassroots artists who are really trying to grow their digital presence?
I mean, I think the first thing too, and maybe others would disagree, but I wouldn't focus on building the big presence. I would just focus on really what is it that you want to share? Like what is, as we've been talking about, what is the story? Like, you don't just post to post, like, let it be quality over quantity. And I think once you have a lot of quality, then, generally the audience will build, but it is a gradual process. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen overnight. There was a lot of, you may just hear about it and this seems like an overnight sensation, but there was most likely a lot of work that went into building it. So I would just focus more on the quality than the rush to get like a big presence.
I think Michelle's completely right. There is no quick fix. I think if there was a quick fix, then we'd be selling it. It really is a really long-term job. Yeah, it really is. And I think Michelle's right. It's definitely quality over quantity. And I think communicating and having engagement with a smaller group of people rather than having no engagement with a bigger group of people is definitely what you want to be aiming for. And I think the same on the PR side as well, in terms of beginning out and starting with coverage. Back in the day when I was at smaller, a different agency after I left Warner, and we used to send over press reports on a Friday, and it would be huge amount that, so many different links and so many different blogs. And I think it transpired that actually there weren't that many people reading those blogs, and the bottom's sort of fallen out of that now. And so really, even from a PR point of view, having some quality sites, so quality, less of them rather than just a huge amount of coverage with sites that very, very few people read is definitely what you're aiming for on the PR side as well.
Yeah, I'm going to come in on the brand side and just a quote that I saw from Airbnb was that their aim was to build something 100 people love versus building something where a million people kind of like it. So I would say that's the same with an artist. It's like when you're genuinely posting, and yeah, it might not get a bunch of traction, but you're also starting to get to know your fans. So those who engage and those who like your post or comment or ask you questions, you're starting to really get to know your fan base. And that's really important for any grassroots campaign.
I'd 100% echo you, Tiffany, like just on, as I said, like I'm more on the corporate brand marketing side of companies, and that's what we want as well. Like you don't want hundreds and hundreds of mentions for a company that are kind of like who cares or whatever. You want the quality stories too, and sometimes those are going to just be a handful, but that's okay versus all the mentions everywhere, and sometimes negative too. So
yeah, I really think that's excellent advice, because it's easy to see people with, millions of streams on TikTok and compare that to maybe your 100 views, but that's still 100 individual people who are interacting with your post. So I think it's important to stay motivated and remind yourself that even one person is still better than nothing. It's still someone that's engaging with you. So I wanted to shift a little bit and talk more about some cultural shifts that you've been a part of working with artists. So for example, it's Mental Health Month this month, and a lot of labels, a lot of artists have been really open about speaking about mental health issues. And then of course, the Black Lives Matter movement and a lot of other political, social issues happening in the world. So I would love if you could each share a little bit about your experience working with cultural shifts.
I'm happy to start on that one, just to say that, when I started in PR kind of several years ago, artists, it was just good enough for them to talk about their music. That's all that music journalists wanted. And now it's not just enough. Artists need to stand for something, and they need to be able to talk politically about what they believe in. I mean, there has been, past few years, so many different cultural movements, and artists need to be educated, and they need to be able to talk fluently, and media want to know that they care politically. I think Tiffany might have mentioned that at the beginning of the panel. It's really, really important, and it's not just enough to talk about the music anymore from a PR point of view.
yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Like, I work for a company called Known, and actually before I decided to take the position, I'm relatively new, it's been 2.5 weeks, but I saw a video of the president who spoke, and he was saying that brands don't have an option now and this was actually 2019, so this was in 2019, brands don't have an option to not say anything. Like you need, and I would agree with this, like you have to stand for something, because if you don't stand for something, then you may stand for nothing. And I think silence can kill. And I just think that it's important to be vocal and to have a point of view, and to really, I mean, that shows that you care too. And if you sing about it in your music, like if you talk about it internally, like I think it's also important to share that message to your followers.
I mean, I obviously agree. I mean, working for a B Corp especially, I think what's important too is for artists to, what I've seen of all 2020 was that I think in the past, if you're looking at cultural shifts, like, revolutions birth music genres, they birth really interesting music as well. And so, when you stand for something, or when your actions kind of speak louder than your art or your words, like I think that's really important for an artist, because it makes you human and that makes you relatable.
Right. I think especially in today's world, it helps to make your audience or your fans feel like they're not alone in thinking about these issues, and that you really care about things that matter. So I think it's really, really important to engage your audience that way on more of a global level that's outside of just like your music. So we have just about, oh yeah, sorry, go ahead, Heather.
No, I was just going to say, but this is taking it back to the very beginning, but it does need to be authentic, you know, artists just jumping on bandwagons and talking about things that they don't understand or that they haven't educated themselves on, you know, they really need to educate themselves if they're going to talk about it in interviews or in songs or whatever. And it needs to be authentic. It can't just be jumping on a trend.
Yeah, it can't be performative. Like the education part is so important, and that's talking about it and learning and not being afraid to ask the questions, but also to like dig in and do your own research and educate yourself. Absolutely. And then educate others as well.
Right. People will see right through it if it's performative in any way. So I do think it's extremely crucial to be very well educated before you speak out about a subject. So we have just about 3 minutes left. So I'd love if you could each share some of the biggest lessons you've learned in the past year.
Well, I'm happy to start because I came back from maternity leave during lockdown. So that was probably one of the biggest challenges I've ever experienced. I took 10 months off to have my little boy. I got back in May. So in the middle of the severe lockdown in the UK with a little toddler running around, 10-month-old baby, not even walking at home. So I learned a lot about patience from I suppose because I've always worked in digital PR, we have always had to adapt really, really quickly. And I think that actually stood the team in good stead for the pandemic and working at home and not being able to do promo in the normal way, not being able to, go to shoots with our artists and all of those things. So I think just being adaptable and being connected, and that's communication, with your team, with the rest of the agency. And people were sat at home feeling very, very, very vulnerable and very disconnected. And so, yeah, I think communication and adaptability, probably the biggest things for me.
Yeah, I would say pivot was like the word of last year. Making plans and then having to redo and remake plans. And that goes professionally and personally. And also we're all humans, having empathy and connection and communication, as you said, Heather, and just realizing that beyond even the work that we're doing day to day, that we are humans and we all have really, really intertwined and complex and personal lives outside of the work that we're doing. And so just, I learned a lot about also health, personal health and professional health as well. And so a lot of reflection this past year, but all great things.
Yeah, I'm just going to echo Michelle and keep it pretty short as we have 1 minute, but, being thoughtful, we paused a lot of different things at WooTransfer and We Present so that we could be more thoughtful about, recognizing what the internet is saturated with and then taking a left turn and being more thoughtful about what we put out there and who we work with. So that was a lot of personal reflection, a lot of, reflection within the company and just being honest with who I work with and not being afraid to be honest.
100%.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed speaking with all of you, and I think this was a really great, informative panel. So thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today and all of our, con attendees watching.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks so much for having me.
Time flies by when I'm feeling low, but that isn't all I know. Days go slow, but the weeks go fast, and eventually it's all in the past. Time flies by when I'm feeling low, but that isn't all I know. Days go slow and the nights go slower, but look to the future and soon you'll know her. Track to track, unsure what's next. Spend the days all in my head or in regret. Wish I didn't, but I do. And sometimes I let my mind drift to you. Song to song, it takes so long. I get fed up and move along. Attachment issues can't get close. Ignore the ones who know me most. Ignore the ones who know me, but what? You've lots of friends on your phone and you complain how you're alone. It's all a joke. Jealousy will kill the vibe, but not yourself. You stay alive all of the time. It's kind of tiring, always trying to win and never finishing. The songs are right, I never finishing. The songs are right, I never finishing. The songs are right. Time flies by when I'm feeling low, but that isn't all I know. Days go slow, but the weeks go fast, and eventually it's all in the past. Time flies by when I'm feeling low, but that isn't all I know. Days go slow and the nights go slower, but look to the future and soon you'll know.